And now just moving on and just linking to this part that this ecosystem, I think it's important, and this is tried to promote from the consortium, that they give a different angles and different perspective to contribute to the research that is done in academia. And it's very important that most of us, we have projects that comes from public funding, and these projects are supposed to bring back into society benefits, right? So what's going to be the impact? And to know this, we have to go to who's going to be the final user. And to bring this all this information, we have Oriol Garces, who is a co-founder. He has a lot of expertise in different areas. He has expertise in market, in business development, in commercial export. He's been part of a lot of companies, but the last 10 years he's been focused precisely in our area, is in the research area on how to bring new ideas from university to bring them into the academia. So he and his colleagues, as part of the top brands, are leading a program funded by the regional government of Catalonia, the northeast of Spain. And they try to bring these ideas in three different stages, like the seed, the product, and the innovators. So the ideas are advancing and having evolution and adding the value. So it's interesting to see what Oriol can bring us, because it's aligned to what we're doing in academia. And without any more interruption, and Oriol, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roger. I hope I can meet half of the expectations that you just mentioned. Okay, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be with you today. And well, first of all, and you will understand very well, Roger, what I mean. Not you personally, but because of me. A small disclaimer especially for those from Imperial College or for those native English speakers. I apologize in advance for my Southern Pyrenees English, okay? But maybe some continental fellows will appreciate, because it's sometimes less pure, okay? So let's put it from the positive side. Besides that, please interrupt me. I love to be interrupted, especially because perhaps we never realize that we do use too much jargon. We invent acronyms on the go, or sometimes we take for granted something that everyone knows, and it's not the case. So please do not hesitate to raise your hand. Okay. So by the way, if anyone raises the hand, I will be happy to stop and take any questions or comments and have some feedback, because I think that's the point. Okay. About me, to make it short, I'm a salesman. Okay. So I'm on sales, and I want my mission, I would say, it is to sell someone's technology. Okay. And that's why I'm here for you. And later on, I will make another kind of introduction parallel to what a researcher could make. Okay. Before starting, let me comment a few previous aspects. So why this session, no? Or why? How did I think about having this session with you? Okay. Basically, because in our company, we are helping many in universities, research centers, bringing technology transfer to markets through licensing to spin-outs, of course. Because this is in the mood of the we are in the season, okay, in the decade of spin-outs. And basically it's because your universities or your research centers feel this, let's say, pressure, let's say, society call. It is about impact, no? And this is what Roger was saying, that at the end of the day, this switch from pure research has turned into having real world impact from your research, and we are going to talk a little bit about this in order to make this framework of how to bring this your innovation, your technology to the market. Okay, so given that this trend has been increasingly over the last 10 years, I mean the trend on going further to close to market, close to bringing these benefits to society. That is the point of today's talk. Okay, so I hope that there are some ideas that are meaningful to you. Okay, and if I confuse you, please again raise your hand and please interrupt me. And I was about to do this question afterwards, but in the meantime that I switch on I introduce my presentation, I share my presentation. Could those of you please raise your hand, those of you who are currently working on a research project that has some kind of potential application outside academia. Please let me, 1, 2, 3. Okay, not bad. 5, 6. Oh, more than 7. That's great. Okay, and thank you. You can, and out of, not out of, is anyone here that has been involved in a licensing process outside the university? Not so many so far. Okay. And let me go one step backwards. How many of you have done research based on what industry, as before Roger was telling us, there are clinicians, there are industry, there are research centers in this coalition, in this partnership that you are building. How many of you have been involved in a research that has been ordered by industry players? Good. 1, 2. Thank you. All right. And last question, which is basically, I hope everyone who has only ever bring and research on your own research line and your research group line or any coalition like a European project or whatever, but without taking into account the market. Okay, that's sincerity. Thank you very much. Good. Okay, so thank you. So this presentation of today is basically addressing these last questions. Okay, so let me first start by introducing myself at the right. Sorry, I will share my pointer as well. Here I have my presentation here. Okay, I adapted the presentation. We usually interact with researchers that are about to or that are thinking about bringing technology to market. Okay, and I was introducing all these questions because we would like you to identify that, for instance, you have a name, of course, you have a field of expertise, you have many projects, but think about one of them, okay, or many of them, and do this introduction, okay. Within this project, this research project, you could here state the question that you want to answer, which is basically the objective that you would like to answer, and the hypothesis of in which fields, okay, which fields can this research, this invention, okay, could be applicable to, okay, in which, let's say, field sector. And if we do that, and my point today will be that we could identify especially in engineering and technological and tech projects, many not only fields sometimes, but also problems that could be solved. And this is the point of today, okay? To identify that your very same technology could answer or could solve problems that are sometimes for different people or from the same sector, but from different stakeholders, okay? And this is another word that we will be using today. Okay, so this is more or less the presentation that we usually ask first time involved in tech transfer researchers to understand that even if they have many research lines, they could identify not only that that technology is applicable to one single sector, but within even X number of sectors, it could be applied to many people, and later on to many other stakeholders within a particular world. Okay, so that's more or less this idea. Okay, so here on the right hand side you have my presentation. Okay, but I was more interested in letting know what's the point, okay, of this presentation. So I just asked you about these 2 points, because it's important. Okay, if I remember well, we were talking about 3-4 people that are only researching their own research line, and 7 people that are having industry financed contract research, let's call it like this, all right? Which is good, because it already says that, you know, these 30 years in terms of tech transfer have evolved somehow, okay? And about today's talk, okay, these are basically the contents and the objectives that ideally, maybe not today, maybe like Casablanca, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, okay, hopefully soon, we will be able to share as something that you have reached, okay, or that some of you already have, but you didn't even realize, perhaps. So first, ideas are about the importance of thinking research under an entrepreneurship mind, okay, and to understand that tech transfer is all around us, all right. This is in order to force us to think that understand the community, okay, understanding our stakeholders around will help us in this part of what is the point today of customer development, okay? And once we develop customer development, usually this is done by methodologies that come from lean startup, okay, agile methodologies, Scrum, etc. All these words, okay, that basically tell you that it is interesting to get to know things quickly and to delete uncertainties as much as possible and the quickest possible. And if it's about failing, let's fail fast and cheap. Okay, so these are basically some tiny part of the conclusions that I could already share with you. Okay, I don't know if some of you remember this film. Okay, but this is something that it's a marriage that started by, you know, convenience and turned into true love. When I think about tech transfer, and the more I meet researchers, and the more I meet academics, and the more I meet part-time researchers, or entrepreneurial scientist, I am more convinced that this is possible. Okay, and sometimes this is the way. Okay, because many of the scientists are not the standard archetype of researcher of person. Sorry, that is inclined towards um, towards entrepreneurship. Okay, so let's understand this axis as a focus on research. Okay, which many of you would be at this level. Okay, I understand that the vast majority here are, at the highest possible level in terms of research focus. But let me share that there is also another axis that we could include, which is tolerance to uncertainty. And if you are a postdoc student or a pre-doc researcher, your tolerance to uncertainty is high, isn't it? Those who are in tenure track, by essence, I would say, would be in a similar situation in terms of tolerance to uncertainty, but the focus is even if talking general types, okay? But it's extremely focused on research, okay? And the professor, let's say that while tolerance to uncertainty it's much less, okay? Because usually they are in more comfortable positions, okay? Their focus is still high, okay? Whereas we have these part-time lecturers or entrepreneurial scientists, maybe some of you who are here are, in a less...
Anche allora ci trovavamo anche con lei. Era la...
Silvia, like, okay. And those of you who are in this uncertain and, let's say, not primarily focused on research, then it is more likely to become these first early adopters of this technology transfer agreement. Okay, so well, having said this, having identified a few types of people, all right, that could be one of you that could fit in it. So let me ask ourselves, why is it important to do some customer development? Okay, so Roger has made a great point in telling us that when doing high-level research, sooner or later, which is rather soon, once you are already in a technology that is not already based on basic research and that's it, you have to go a step forward. Okay, and this step forward tells us a little bit on the problems that engineers or scientists, tech people do, and some mistakes that maybe we are having ideas, inventions about an existing problem, isn't it? That's also a stereotype, but we could also include another stereotype that sometimes we identify problems that these problems are not verified, and once they are verified, we realize that they were not as big as we, or as important, or as harmful, as painful as we thought, and are much smaller. Okay, but these two situations leads us basically towards an over-engineering problem to make it too complex solutions for a problematic that perhaps could be solved in an easier way. And not only that, that maybe it's not taking into account, as Roger was previously mentioning, the different stakeholders, the different people, the different actors that take into account, that should be taking into account into our solution, our technology to become a product. Okay, and this is a little bit the schema that we have been following traditionally in technology transfer. So basically, The traditional model is that we have more or less money. This money is managed by universities. This university research, when successful, creates some IP, intellectual property. I'm aware that you have had webinars on that. And this intellectual property can be transferred or should be transferred, and this is a push. This is a push towards industry, okay? And therefore, this is the end, let's say that the end benefit of it is society, okay? But this is what it was and how it is today, or how are we pushed? How are we told that the story should go? The story should go this way now. The new way to do things is that industry, as you are stating before when you were raising your hands, industry is asking us to explain, some time to explain a problem. This problem, if we have good business development skills in these research centers, the universities, could turn into research contracts. Of course, bridging the gap between the industry and university and all circumstances that this could entail. But then the university creates some IP that already, let's say in an ideal world, already has the customer, okay? And therefore, this customer creates a product or a service or something that or a therapy that impacts successfully in society, okay? This is the two ways, but this is reality according to our experience, okay? According to our experience, we are still in this traditional model that is assigning public funds for basic research. This research is done by universities, but then that's usually where we are now in some of our audience, perhaps, that we already have perhaps an IP, or that we are undertaking a patentability studies, or we do know, but we didn't check that much about which were the sectors and the problems that would be successfully solved. And then when we are asking this, it's sometimes that we can fine-tune even more the scope of the intellectual property that we are aiming at either filing or granting. And then we turn, once we have this, which is another usual point, okay? You researchers, you already have an IP, protection in terms of a patent or a software or a trade secret that you have successfully managed not to undermine. And then you're looking for a research contract from industry that will allow you to transfer and license it to industry, okay? So we are in this transition that it's a bit of problematic, because we are in the middle of, let's say, of two rivers, okay? Because this was the first river, okay? This was the traditional model, how it worked. So we had our fields of knowledge. We were having this research, these results. The evaluation of the results was basically whether if this was publishable or not in an academic renowned magazine or paper. And then this publication would, at the end of the day, benefit society and economy. All right, that was what has been changed from these during the last 30 years, is that this evaluation has gone beyond the academic stuff and is now an evaluation. And if it's successfully done, you can, before publishing, okay, so you could first evaluate whether if your invention, your technology is protectable, okay, and if this is protectable, all right, you could then go forward to the previous slide where we were telling that we would be licensing to an industry player, and then this industry player would develop that product or that service and then benefit society. Okay, but but when doing this, okay, and understanding about the market, we need to do some customer development, some industry research, some market research, okay, in order to find potential uses, potential applications, potential sectors, and also um, who would be benefiting or who would be the channel of, let's say, let me let me come out my salesman, the channels of distribution of this technology. Okay, and this new way to see things is the way that we have this impact, okay, at a, let's say, broader scope. All right, of course universities are part of the game, and this game is part of we are part of a community. Now I'm going to show you, I take this this part of the presentation also from a from Tom Hockaday is using this this innovation community sketch that it's also taken by John Hopkins University Press, and it's very interesting, or it's very useful for you, for those who have never or ever or thought about where to start from. Then it's about starting about who are the players, okay, in my community. Okay, we tend to ignore the word ecosystem, because in an ecosystem it looks like it's more that someone eats someone others, no? And here we want to see this more as a way where we are a part of this. You could put yourselves here, okay, and disregarding of your project, you will probably have these players, okay? Of course, if you're not in the medical sector or in some parts of life sciences, maybe you will not have hospitals, or perhaps if you never create or are thinking about create a spin-off, you will never have bankers. But if you do, for instance, you will be interested in angel investors, in business angel networks, other companies or startups that could be your customer or your partners, etc. But before that, now where we are, it is about managing your technology, your research, together with your technology transfer office, and to sometimes to get some help from consultants, to, if you have to externalize some part of the work and need to be focused on more technical work. But in any case, and this is an advice from an insider, by the way, from a consultant, the more a researcher knows about not only his technology, but these applications, the better and the quicker that this technology can successfully and rapidly reach the market. Okay, so this was this first idea on community, but at the end of the day, a stakeholder map, it's very similar to that. Okay, and another exercise that it is interesting to do, and this is more about a particular project stakeholder map, not a community or a research community stakeholder map. It is about, sorry, is it about putting yourselves in the middle? Okay, if we were in a lean startup world, we would be putting the customer at the center, but you know what? We don't know who will be the customer. So that's why we are placing several candidates of customers, okay? And then we will see, okay, in this process, who is really your customer, okay? And this is slightly a change that we do in tech transfer innovation projects with respect to startup, agile, lean startup project. Okay, so we place you and your technology at the center. We identify potential market segments, and then we build a whole universe, okay, or at least a constellation um, around you, okay, and around your project, okay. So here, instead of you, it would be even better if we were placing your project, okay. And now I am going to show you, just for the sake of how does this translate into reality, a few examples of projects that have been um, undertaken undertaking some research, okay, and this basic research about who is around them, okay, what is their um, um, stakeholder map, okay. So basically, um, this is a let's say pretty interesting stakeholders map, because we are talking about a project on, let's say, breathing, all right? Very similar to maybe some of you that could be undertaking some devices that would help pulmonary breathing, okay? In this case, it is not the point, but it is this case, the customer development that was done after identifying all these, let's say, stakeholders, okay, because this is the work that we do at the very beginning. We do some hypotheses, and then we identified which are the different sectors that we could be addressing to, who would be the industries, okay, or the players within each industry that could be potentially interested in that. All right. And basically that's why it is interesting, this first standing point, which is what is my technology about, where is it interesting to be used, and what are the players, okay? The more closer to become a customer or a partner, all right? And the more far away, let's say, the less close to you, okay? Even though we know that, for instance, if you place competitors in to some extent, they could very easily, sooner than later, in many projects, become your customers, okay? And then you will be asking me, the customers of what? And basically it could be the customer of a license, or the customer of an industry research agreement, or the customer of my product if I finally launch it, because they will be those who will distribute it, they will resell it through a better sales network. Okay. I have other examples, but it is basically examples to show you that you can do it your way, the simpler way. Here at the right hand side, we have this one pager. This is the way we are preparing our early stage projects to advance in terms of technology. In this case, this is a drug delivery device that it is envisaging to solve the fibrosis that can be taken, that can happen in eyes when people are under surgery of glaucoma. Okay, which is another point, a very big market size. Okay. We have other this is the last example I am going to show you, but this is just to tell you that it could be software or it could be other things. In this case, imagine that you have the way to identify your ancestry. Okay, imagine that you have a way to know how your ancestors will be looking, how close to any ancestor are you looking like, and this could have many implications and many forms of product. Okay, in this case, I am taking this one because we are thinking about an app. Okay, an app towards business to consumer, which is extremely rare in many of the projects where we are having, like the ones that maybe you are having. Okay, but this can happen. Okay, as well. But well, besides that, I want to tell you more about customer development. And customer development, in a nutshell, is about applying, in another way, okay, in a simpler way, if I may say, or in a more, let's say, in a less academic way, the startup methodology. Okay, because we need to understand that startup methodology is a methodology that, through the scientific method, we quickly get a minimum viable product in order to validate whether if this is of interest to anybody, okay, and to anybody that we have previously identified and assumed under a certain assumptions, okay, hypothesis, that we have something good to offer to them. We have a value proposition to offer to them, okay, and this is the methodology that helps, in this case, startups to scale and grow, right? And the philosophy of Lean Startup is this, as I was saying, first to understand, get to know the environment. So more or less, we're talking about the stakeholder map. Later on, about having these ideas, okay, respond to an application, to a sector, okay, that we can measure, okay, that we can know if there would be any interest in a given sector. And later on, what we would be doing, it is to prototyping, okay, to have an hypothesis, to show, okay, to design, okay, an MVP, to design a product that apparently will be interesting to our, let's say, users, customers, etc. All right. Once we have this prototype, we could, if we were a startup, we could elaborate the way to interact with this end customer, or with this paying customer, or with this intermediary, okay, and then finally to confront him, okay, to see him, to interact with him, and to know what they are thinking about our previous hypothesis that we have built in this part of the process. Okay, and what's the story here? That usually, if we are doing good, okay, we just need to adapt, okay, and go back and fine tune. Sometimes we have wrong customer or wrong product, or we have, for instance, we could have the right customer but the wrong product because it's not fulfilling it's not fulfilling the requirements, or it's not addressing the problem that our customer is interested. Okay, when I say customer, please think about a device that is in a hospital, and this hospital could need many people, like from nurses to clinicians. Okay, so in terms of researchers, our, let's say, lean startup journey for innovators like you are, let's build from an idea of research. Let's have this first proof of concept. All right, let's see if that makes sense. All right, if it works. Okay, and once we are here, you see, we can prospect, we can try to identify fields of application and problems to solve to these people. Okay, and once we have done this, we right away ask them, we interact with them, okay, so that we get their feedback. Sometimes the feedback is, we don't know how even our device is going to be solving our customer, but we need to at least to validate what is the problem. Okay, because if we have already a technology, maybe the product we can adapt it according to this feedback. Okay, all right, and then we adapt prototyping, and we come again into this cycle. Okay, this is the complete lean startup process that for another time maybe we can talk about it, but basically is what I just said about building a business model together with a value proposition, and then to do some customer development in order to find if this product is interesting for a given customer. And this part of it, which is about product market fit, it's about realizing whether if there is enough people, okay, that will be interested in our product. And then if it's the case, then we build a company and we scale. All right. But our talk is addressing basically this part of it. And now you will see the adaptation that we could do of this model into the model of innovation. Okay. So for instance, we have here this, imagine that instead of having the business model canvas, we had this, our stakeholder map. Out of this stakeholder, within this stakeholder map, we find some players, and about them, we could create a value proposition for each of them. Okay. But we don't have to forget that we need to also to take good advantage of knowing that there is perhaps a market, or perhaps there is not a market. Okay. And that's, what we recommend, as a top innovation methodology for you guys. So coming out from your speech, you have your stakeholder map, and within this, you could prioritize to which of them will you be interacting first. Okay. This, of course, this is the easy way. The Tam-Sam sum. Tam-Sam sum it is about how big is the market. Okay. Total available market, serviceable available market, and share of the market. Okay. And these are keywords for investors, for industry, for everyone. But in order to reach that, you before need to make a choice. Okay. A choice of sector, a choice of customer, a choice of what is the problematic that your technology is going to solve, because it could be solving many technology, right? And many sectors. And then imagine that you have the option to go to attend to a sector on organ on a chip, or the wine and agro food sector. Okay. Which sector is bigger? Agro food is much bigger, okay, than organ on a chip sectors. But if you had a microscope, which is the case I'm thinking about, okay, you need to validate. You need to, before creating a huge microscope, very successful for the agro-tech market, for wineries, for instance, or for sellers, we need to validate it, okay? And then this matrix is helpful in order to prioritize which are the stakeholders that you are going to interview to interact first, okay? And here we have a validation register, all right? So in a nutshell, who to ask first? Well, first, let's rank our stakeholders about perhaps, okay, size of market. As a second criteria, think about which one will be more critical or more uncertain that will be giving you good answers of it. And then by mixing this couple of criteria, you will be able to prioritize to whom are you going to interact first. So this here, by the way, you have this definition on the market sizes. The point of it is not the biggest market size, I insist, but to whom you are able to build a unique selling proposition, okay, which is basically what do you do better than anyone, okay, and at the same time it is desirable by a significant number of people, okay. So that is basically what you can be looking for, okay. And fine-tuning this, it is to use this other axis, which is how critical it is to know something and how uncertain it is. Therefore, the hypothesis, so whatever thing you don't know at all, and it would be critical to know about it because it would be changing your mind completely. This would be placed here, and therefore all the hypotheses, all the knowledge, all the interviews, all the stakeholders that have key information that are in this quadrant, in this part of the axis, should be the first to ask, okay? And this is a small tip on where to start from, okay? Many of the researchers came to us by telling us, yes, I have sent an email, but they do not answer. But I sent them maybe 10 emails, and they didn't answer. And this is kind of offensive, okay, in the academic world. What am I saying here? Why am I saying this? Well, basically, industry is extremely used not to answer emails and do not care about unanswered emails. So perhaps it is about to talk. Then, therefore, it is about to meet. Maybe it's about to go to fairs, to congresses. Maybe it's about to call. Okay, these things that is especially uncomfortable in academia, and then once you have overcome all that reluctances, then you could meet. Ideally, of course, face-to-face, but if not, video meetings are good as well. And to start by this, okay? And what would be the answers or the questions to get answers from? Basically, what you had here. What I want to know from this part here, I asked to these stakeholders in order to build better my solution. So your product, so your market, okay, to choose your market, okay, or to choose or define your product, all right? And the last advice on this part, it is to register it, okay, which is, I realize that this is a very much easier advice to take into account because in terms of meetings, okay, as they are not that often, okay, they are not with you researchers, you entrepreneurial researchers do not have usually 10 meetings per week on customer development. It is easier, okay, or at least it is nicer to have this little learning registration slide, okay, which would be able to summarize the points of your learnings and the questions that you addressed, okay? And that is extremely useful if later on you want to apply for future research grants or to know about industry willingness to finance, or even if you want to create a spin-off to justify how many and what did previous interactions say. Okay. I will take 5 to 10 minutes more, Roger, if it's okay.
Absolutely, please.
Okay. So once we reach here, once we reach this to this point, we usually have this question about what's next. Okay. So you say, oh, well, Oriol, I have my technology. This technology could be applied in several sectors. These sectors are very different, but I have done an hypothesis to choose one of them, okay, and to prioritize one of them. Although I will interview in some other sectors as well, just to just to make sure, because I am heavily uncertain about others, so I need to check, because it would change the way I would approach my project very differently. So once we've done all these, let's say, first choices, okay, identify the sector, the market, identify who the customer, who the users are, who do I have to satisfy, etc. Then we are already building a product. Okay, this product could be a license, but a license to a given sector for a given use that could come up with royalties coming up from sales of a given product in a given sector for a given customer. So what am I saying now? Our product should be comparable to other existing products or anything, any service, any other outside option that the market is using so far. Okay, and this is the way that we could summarize how the market research process leads to a benchmark. Okay, so now that we have interviewed potential customers, stakeholders, channel, users, etc., we will be able to identify competitors. Why? Well, because they will have told us. Okay, so then with this information, okay, we will be able to even see what our weaknesses and strengths are. Maybe it's a good moment to fine tune. Okay, it is important to be aware of what are the marketing strategies that we use with respect to them. Okay, but the point it is that before making the conclusion, a benchmark, it is about, let's compare it with what we have. And our point here is idea. It is deliberate using idea in this moment, because I link it to the very first part of the presentation where we say that we over-engineer. Okay, before engineering, ask. Okay, that would be the bottom line. Okay, so this this story could be somehow an example of evolution. It is, this industry. Okay, we have a technology that was substituting and that has almost substituted completely the fountain pen technology. Okay, and it's the ballpoint pen. Okay, and this ballpoint pen has evolved, in the 50s, but also in the 90s and the early years. Okay, different technologies for a very same use, that are two of them in a very similar sector and one of them in a not so similar sector. Okay, because we could understand that this ballpoint pen, okay, if you are a bit familiar to the writing instruments industry, it is more of a luxury product. So it's in the sector of luxury rather than in the sector of school, back to school, or office work. Okay, so this is more or less the idea. Okay, so of course it's a similar product. Okay, of course the technology is, we could say, between these two basically the same. This one is a bit different because it has liquid ink. Okay, and different sectors, so different size of market, different serviceable available markets, and different shares of market, of course different users, of course different channels of distribution, etc., etc. Okay, so in a nutshell, in the context of a market research, this is a technique that standard companies do. Okay, understand what other competitors offer. See, this is, of course, in technologies, it is important to know what perhaps prices do we have. Are we talking about a device? Let's compare with other devices. Is the first device in physiotherapy that you are taking about for this illness? Well, there are comparable products in other illnesses in physiotherapy. Okay, so this is important to realize. Who is the target audience? Okay, who is the user? Who are the customers? These customers or these users, where do they buy it? Okay. And when we are thinking about where do they buy it, we are identifying the distribution channels. Okay. And if we are looking where, what are the channels that our competitors are using to sell, then we are doing our homework. Okay. It is the same with respect to what do they do to market their technology. Okay. When we are thinking about product, we can use the very same idea for technology. Okay. And what is the market? What is the end consumer? What is the feedback that the market is giving to them? Okay. So all these things, I am now mentioning them for a given product. Okay. It could be that pen or that ballpoint pen that we were having, we were seeing a couple of minutes ago, but we could also use it for a technology, for another research technology that is about to be in the market, that is in a regulatory stage that is earlier than yours or more advanced to yours, etc. Okay. Then the benchmark, it is about looking similar products. Okay. Identify whatever product it is, or brand, or research group, or company, okay, that we want to compare with. We could even use digital tools to identify them, okay? So no need to do sometimes heavy rough research, okay? We identify what are the comparable items to consider, and finally, we say, look, how many attributes, how many characteristics are we going to take into account? Then we collect them, and then we build a benchmark. Okay, so that's basically the work in order to be able to analyze and then have a comparison of what you previously had as customer research, as customer development, as market analysis, and compare it to existing other technologies. Okay, so this is the whole of the process from, let's say, from idea or from first research to market. Okay, even before, and I insist about that, even before you have completely built the whole characteristics of the product. Okay, because it's about to ask, it's about to interact, and once you create a benchmark, you could establish some characteristics in your product that you still don't have, okay? But that you have identified that are good to have, because there's something that is key for the customer and that other technologies or other products do not have. And finally, I'd like to close this presentation by having this message on what to do when we are a technology in an early stage. Okay, so let's take two examples. Okay, well, one example in two areas. Okay, first, it is who are the players in the sector. Okay, in which assume that we have identified already a given sector that our technology would be useful. Okay, microelectronics, for instance. Okay, or chips. Okay, who are the players in the sector? Then that means that we will have to identify who they are. Okay, who they are, stakeholder map. Okay, but this is not only the point. Imagine that instead of microelectronics or chips, we are in the health sector. Okay, and the point it is, okay, who the users are. Are we talking about patients or are we talking about someone else? Are the users going to be nurses, or are the users going to be the IT people from a hospital, or are the users going to be the managers of hospitals, or no, real managers of hospitals will be the decision makers. Okay, so what will they be interested in let's say basically on the same things as patients, on the same things as doctors, really, or on the same? No, probably on their own pains, on their own situation. Okay, and of course, that doesn't mean that we don't have to be far of professional clinicians, etc., or associations. Okay, that's one reminder, one final reminder. Okay, another reminder, it is the 6 steps towards building our stakeholder map and why it is interesting for us. Okay, so we identify our potential stakeholders. You could even build a database, okay, but disregarding of the technology that you use to store information, you could use that simple criteria on who to prioritize first. Then we always recommend to start by 6 interviews, not necessarily of the same stakeholders, of course. And then start meeting, start deleting these critical aspects that we want to know. And the only way so far that we know, it is to ask, to interview, to meet, okay, to do active research, okay, which is the previous step of sales, of course. And then once we have this stakeholder map, we prioritize, we choose who to meet, and if it's not successful, do not panic, okay? The tolerance towards frustration for a tech transfer professional, it has to be, let's say, medium at least, okay? Because pivoting, which means adapt, change your customer, adapt towards a different potential customer or a different stakeholder because your product or the characteristics of your product, this is the value proposition, is not suitable. This is a matter of importance, okay? This is a matter of taking into account that it's no drama, okay, for that. And this is it, basically. Now it's a good moment for Q&A or comparisons or benchmarks, with other technologies, or feel free to ask and comment, and well, basically to use this message, that nowadays it's a bit old-fashioned, but good rock never ends.